So once you're getting ready to start into After Effects, I'd like to give a quick introduction to the kind of the workspace and what you're looking at. So again, if you have gone in and started up After Effects, you've started a new project, make sure you save it. So you can always go to File, Save As, and make sure you know where to save it. Again, my suggestion is you put it on a thumb drive, such as this, and keep it there. So once it's saved and you're all set and you know where to go to find to start your project the next time you need to come back to it, then it's a good idea to kind of start poking around and looking at the interface, right? So After Effects is basically set up to kind of help you animate things quickly and efficiently. It's also set up to do like special effects and a whole bunch of fancy high processor requirement things. So this is a program that can take quite a bit of memory if you're not careful. And so one of the things you might want to do to start off with is to go ahead and just take a look at your settings. So if you go in here to After Effects and you go into, let's see, you want to go to project settings here like this, you'll see that you have a whole bunch of like options here for how your computer is set up, time, the display of the whole thing, and all of this kind of stuff that's possible for you to kind of just mess around with, right? So it's good to know what you're doing with all of that kind of stuff, as well as to go into your preferences, which would be sorry, it's not your preferences, it is your settings. So go into your settings here and you'll find it, and you can go in here and kind of look around. But one of the ones you really want to look for is your memory and performance. So if you click on that, you'll see that your computer will give you different options for how much RAM you're going to allocate towards After Effects, right? And so I always tell people the more the better, is they always say, like, try to get as much RAM set aside for After Effects as you can get, because this is one of those programs that really takes a lot out of it. You can go in here and mess around with other things. Like here, if I wanted to, I'd probably crank that down a little bit. There's lots of options in here for setup, for reviews, for display, like all this kind of stuff that you can play around with. But just check your RAM. If you don't have a lot of RAM, just be prepared to be waiting a little bit. It's going to take you a little while to process some of the things that you're going to try and do in here. So again, that's under After Effects, and you would just go in here under settings, and you can adjust all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing you would want to look at. And then the other thing would just be the way that these projects and products work is that you have your tools, which are going to appear kind of up here at this top toolbar. You have palettes, which are these little kind of square things with another little square next to them. So like here it says composition, and you'll see there's a little square there. I call that the hamburger. I don't know why. It just reminds me of like a sandwich. I think I heard someone else say that on the internet once, and it cracked me up, so I've used it ever since. So if you click on that, though, it'll give you a whole bunch of options underneath that. So every one of these panels has a hamburger that you can click on and look underneath the hood there and see what kind of changes you might want to make. So you're going to have tools, you're going to have palettes, you're going to have a timeline, where this is where like you can scrub through this timeline and things will happen, and you can see kind of what's happening over time. And then you're going to have these menus up here. And so menus are a way to adjust certain factors and things that happen inside of the sort of image editing spot that you're in. So that's the gist of it. You're going to want to kind of get the hang of like looking around and clicking on these things. If you're ever lost, like you can't find a thing, like you remember there used to be this thing called the media browser, but you can't find it anywhere, you can always go to Window and go find it and click on media browser, and it will either click it on or off depending if the check marks are on or not. So that's good. And then there's also, if you go under Window, you'll see there are workspaces. So you can set the panels and the palettes up in a way that helps people do a certain things they might want to do. So if you're going to do animation, Adobe has a preset workspace for you that you can click on, and that's going to give you the things that they think will probably be most useful to someone doing animation. If you click through this again, you'll go to like painting is another one. If you have like a really small screen, you can use the small screen button. That'll kind of simplify it all down for you. The one that I usually tend to go with is just essential graphics or default. Sometimes that one just kind of has everything in the normal spot. So, but it's up to you how you want to set that up. You can also save custom workspaces if that's something that is helpful for you to do later on. So once you get your kind of orientation around all of this, the main thing to know is that After Effects works in a project, which is, you've got a whole project that you're working on, and then within it you have compositions or comps. And so compositions are kind of smaller little segments of work that you can do. So you can name your comps if you want to, and I suggest you name them in ways that makes sense. You can set the presets up so that they're the size that you want them to be. If you're going to work in 4K, I suggest you just stick with standard HD for most things. You always want to make sure you have the square pixels checked, and then your resolution. What this just means is the display resolution of the comp, not the actual way it'll render out in the end. You can change the background color if you want that to be black or any color. You can double click on it and change that around. Black is just all the way down the corner there, and then just click OK. And you'll see that now up here in the project palette you have a comp 1, right? So you have that comp that's there. If for some reason you wanted to make a new comp, you could come down here and you could click on create a new composition, and it'll make a second composition that'll show up there too. So that's where the compositions live. And when you're working on a composition, you'll see that it shows up down here in the timeline. So you'll get a new kind of little palette there in the timeline, and then you can scrub through it and see what's happening. Right now we don't have anything. And then you have your basic kind of sort of setup for setting up comps, right? You also have folders, so you can organize things that way. You can do things like interpreting footage or adjust render settings, but I would suggest you leave all that kind of stuff alone for now. Right now you see my window is really small. I can always click here and go to fit, and it'll fit it inside the window, whatever size that window might be. And that's the basics of kind of setting up and thinking through the workspace. You'll to bring in things we'll talk about in the next video, but it's a good example of how the comps kind of live regardless of whether you've imported any assets in here at all. So I could start with comp 1 and start building something here just with the tools that I've got up here in the toolbar. So that's enough to get you rolling. Try some things out, see what you can find.